us was that it is our duty to try to correct injustices in the world. And if you see something wrong, change it with your hands. If you're not able to, then speak out against it. And if you're not able to do that, then feel bad about it in your heart. But that is the weakest form of faith. Wherever possible, the Muslim should try to take action and not let an injustice go by without calling it what it is and asking for change.
All right, what do we have?
Books prepared for the week.
Dealing with change is part of Jamil Johnson's job. As chief of staff for Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York, he manages the congressman's schedule and briefs him on policy issues.
The biggest problem with the bill is that there's the issue of discrimination using federal funds. Because it's not like a private grant.
You're telling me that you recommend a no vote.
I'm recommending a no vote. As we said in the beginning, I'm going to give you the technical part and what I think the issue is. You take care of the politics.
Good deal. What else we have?
My goal is not necessarily to simply seek votes or campaign money or to be accepted as a part of the game. As Muslims, we must seek justice. So what I try to do is educate. In many cases, the best thing that you're able to do with that kind of education is decrease prejudice and increase understanding. If I practice my Islam on the job and do that without trying to interfere with anyone else's practices, whether they be religious or otherwise, then I make it easier for the next Muslim that comes on board. Especially also if I do a good job, because then some of the prejudice, some of the misunderstanding goes away.
One of the narrations.
Johnson coordinates the Friday prayer service, or Jummah, on Capitol Hill.
It's grown since we started it. Used to be sometimes 3, 5, 10 of us. Now there can be up to 40, 50 people. We're busting out of the room that we're in. It's kind of a re-energizing, kind of refilling our fuel tank with faith again for the rest of the week.
The image of the messenger gives us an example of somebody who was extremely successful as a head of state. Nevertheless, he never had to compromise his integrity.
One of the most important things for a Muslim is remaining constantly in remembrance of Allah. What we are commanded to do is that we make formal prayer 5 times a day. Because when you live in a society that constantly gives you acceptance and praise because of material things or achievement, we need that constant remembrance of Allah in order to kind of bring us back to the right path. As some say, keeping our eyes on the prize. And prayer is that remembrance. Even though Islam isn't the biggest faith in America, even though it's sometimes just ridiculed, the fact of the matter is that I can practice. I can make my 5 prayers a day. It was much harder for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions to do this.
The first Muslims faced a torrent of ridicule and abuse when they practiced Islam in public. Attacked by crowds throwing stones, they retreated to the surrounding mountains to pray in secret. Many pagan families split apart when their children converted to Islam. Finally, the leaders of Muhammad's tribe, the Quraysh, decided that harassment alone would not be enough to stop him.
The Quraysh, they see it as, our honor is being threatened, we need to deal with this. This is the point where they begin to really increase their persecution. They start sanctions on the house of Bani Hashim, which is the sub-clan of the Prophet Muhammad. They begin sanctions, they begin to prevent them from trading, from transacting.
And that meant that basically they were being starved out. They couldn't buy food, they couldn't do business. Abu Talib was ruined by this. The Hashim lived in one street, and Muhammad and Khadija and the children moved into this street. And this became a little Muslim ghetto.
And this leads to real hardship. There's a period of time where, according to the tradition, they're actually eating from the leaves of trees.
Famine destroyed the fortunes of Muhammad's protector Abu Talib and his follower Abu Bakr. The survival of both the clan and Islam were in jeopardy. But for Muhammad, the damage hit even closer to home.
Khadija, Muhammad's beloved wife, perhaps weakened by the privations, actually died. And that was just a crippling blow for him. Left him feeling alone and vulnerable and weak. He would miss her all his life, I think. Then the catastrophe happened that Abu Talib died, perhaps himself weakened by the deprivation in food. Now, without Abu Talib, Muhammad was fair game for assassination. And there's a terrible moment where he utters this heartbreaking prayer, saying, "Oh my God, I have no other protector but you, Allah." And how was he going to move forward? He'd done what Allah had told him to do. He proclaimed this message, and all he seemed to have done was stir up hostility and hatred, and split his tribe down the middle. This wasn't improving matters. He must have felt in almost a sort of a dark night of the soul.
He is at the low point of his mission. He's been almost 13 years now in Mecca, and the results are not impressive. But at this point, at this low ebb, he is now being prepared for the most extraordinary mystical experience of his prophetic life, and that is what is known as the night ascension.
The story goes that one night he was sleeping near the Kaaba, and he was woken from sleep by Gabriel, who mounted him on a burak, a magical steed, and they flew from Mecca to Jerusalem. And then he began an ascent up through the seven heavens to the divine throne. At every stage of the heavens, he meets various prophets of the past. He meets Abraham, he meets Jesus and John the Baptist, he meets Moses. And finally, he enters into the divine presence, and there the sources are silent, because when you enter into the presence of God, you've gone beyond words.
And he receives from God the highest form of knowledge and truth, and many injunctions of the religion itself, including the final form of the daily prayers. Now, all of this took place in a time beyond time. That's why some sources say that as the door was swinging when he left, he was still swinging when he came back.
For later Muslims, this also meant that the departure point, that is, Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock, became also important. Muslims say that there are three holy cities in Islam: Mecca, and Medina, the city of the Prophet, and Jerusalem.